So let's begin, shall we? Now, as advertised, we're going to be talking about human factors in digital transformation today. And I want to let you know that that fits as a subset, as a really narrow subset, into a larger body of work that I've been working on for the last 25 years. And basically, it's leadership as a grand topic, then leadership performance as a sort of medium industry non-specific topic, and then specific to digital transformation is where we're going to go today. We're going to talk about leadership performance and the human elements that impede performance in digital transformation efforts. Now in terms of digital transformation, I've done like minor developments and integrations. I've done full app stacks for MarTech. I've done full app stacks for small and medium businesses. I've done entire ERP changes for major manufacturers. Some of the brands that you might recognize. My digital transformation efforts have been with Sabic, a little bit with AdNoc. I did the artificial intelligence strategy for Diwa in Dubai last year. So those are some that you might know of. And in terms of leadership training and leadership development, some of the brands that you might know in the digital transformation space, I'm doing leadership development now for Telia Company, for Microsoft, and I'm also in negotiations now to do leadership development with Apple. So that's the bridge between digital transformation as a project or an effort or a set of efforts and leadership development and transformation. And I've noticed that as I bring these two disciplines together, we have a really, really clear understanding now of why 84% of all of our digital transformation efforts in the MENA region have been failing over the last number of years. Okay? Let me get into it. Oh goodness, I don't want to give you the brand, right? I don't want to tell you because I don't want to embarrass anybody. So there was, it was a couple of years ago, I was working with this large manufacturer. They had a number of plants around the MENA region, and the owner of the company came to me, and I was doing strategy and restructuring for the group, but I wasn't doing the digital transformation at that time. The digital transformation was being led by someone else, and I won't tell you the name of that brand either. But just so that you get an idea of the story, the owner of the company came to me while I was doing the strategy and restructuring, and he said, listen, I need your help. I said, what's going on? He said, we have a fully new ERP system being installed and integrated right now, along with some artificial intelligence pieces. And I'm pretty sure that these guys have no idea what they're doing, and I don't know how to solve it, and I'm pretty sure that we're getting ripped off. Can you help me? And I said, sure, of course, I'll have a look. So I poked my nose into the ERP installation, and of course the other consultants were not very happy about my being assigned to that until I had done my due diligence and I got out to the other end and realized that these guys were actually really, really good. They were really good. The ERP system that they were installing, the AI systems that they were installing were very good. They were on point. The price was right. The NPV calculations were correct. And so I went back to the owner and I said, look, you have nothing to worry about. These guys know what they're doing. They're installing the right pieces of hardware and the right bits of software. They're working well together with your team and with their development teams and the agile teams that we've rented alongside. And don't worry about it. They're going to be fine. Okay? The problem wasn't the technology. It was just trust. It was just that the owner didn't have enough trust in the vendor and their own internal leadership in the IT department to make sure that the digital transformation process could go ahead without any major snags. So the owner himself had become a major snag, and only because of a lack of trust and a lack of understanding of what the digital transformation efforts were trying to accomplish. In a second organization, this was about, goodness, maybe 2 years ago, major organization here in the UAE is a government organization. I went in and talked to the managing director of this large government organization. And I was talking to the managing director and all of the directors of the different departments alongside them it was a round table basically, and I presented artificial intelligence for them for 3 hours just to give them an understanding of what artificial intelligence was, what could be accomplished with it, and how long it would take to implement and what the possible impact would be on the organization financially and in terms of efficiencies. And this part's a little embarrassing to talk about because I didn't know what to do. I was really kind of freaked out. So this guy raises his hand, and it was the head of engineering for the entire organization, the director of engineering. He has like 1,000 employees under him. And he said, yes, Dr. Corrie, I have a question. And I said, what is it, sir? How can I help you? And he said, I thought artificial intelligence was when robots come to take over all of our jobs. And I just about burst out laughing. Like I really, really wanted to laugh until I realized he was serious. Like this guy he was really scared. So he was looking at me fully serious and he was saying, I think that artificial intelligence is robots coming to take over all of our jobs. Is that real or not real? And I realized, oh my goodness, like this, he's serious about it. And I'm the voice of reason for him. And so I was looking at him and I was just absolutely dumbfounded. And then I decided to do like a little temperature check in the room, and I looked around the room to just glance at everybody's facial responses to see whether or not this was a common thing. And about half of the people in the room were confused. They were looking at him like, are you serious right now? And the other half of the people were very much in tune with this guy's question. Yes, it's robots coming to take over our jobs. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a very basic fear that comes from a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, and just basic that lack of communication on their part with whoever it is that's providing these services for them. And so I was able to ease his fears and say, look, we're not going to lose our jobs. Artificial intelligence isn't coming with its army of robots. It's not the Terminator coming to replace all of our jobs. But instead, what we're doing is we're augmenting our jobs in ways that makes us much more efficient. And so then one of the other directors, it was a woman, she raised her hand and she said, Dr. Corrie, but seriously though, like, what if my job gets replaced through this artificial intelligence wave? Shouldn't I be concerned about that? And I said, not really. I said, because you have different options for how you augment yourself. You can make yourself smarter, faster, so you can do more in the same amount of time, or you can do the same amount of work in less time. So I said to her, what would happen to you if you could accomplish all of your KPIs, do your entire job, and do everything within just 10 hours a week, right? 10 hours. What would you do with the other 30 hours? And she said, I would spend more time with my kids. And I said, great. That's what artificial intelligence offers you if that's the direction in which you want to go. You can go and spend more time with your kids and accomplish the same amount of work in a shorter period of time. And I think that's where artificial intelligence and some of the augmentations we're having in digital transformation really allow us to think outside the box in terms of the future of work, right? And in a third organization, this was, again, not so long ago, maybe a year ago, large multinational organization, oil and gas sector. I walked in and one of the directors came to me and said, hey, listen, we need you to do a little investigation on our IT department. I said, what's that? They said, well, we gave them a big budget, okay, we had some money, so we gave them a big budget. They wanted to do some artificial intelligence implementation, so they went out and looked for some artificial intelligence implementation. They bought it, they brought it back, but we're not actually sure what it does, and we're not actually sure what the business case is for it. Is it profitable? Is there an NPV that's positive? Do we have anything to look forward to in terms of the implementation of this particular artificial intelligence piece? So I went and did some digging, and I found out that the IT department really just had shiny toy syndrome. They had purchased some software from the market that really wasn't necessary, and it didn't bring a lot of value to the business model, and it didn't provide any business outcomes that could be calculated on an NPV that was positive. So they really had just missed the mark, and they had become distracted by something that was really cool and something that would be really fun. And yes, it was really cool and fun, and I got to play with it in the process, but it really just didn't make sense for the business. And so that I had to help them to back out of the implementation of that. So what I noticed in all three of these stories, whether we're talking about the round table with people asking about robots taking over our jobs, or we're talking about the implementation of a major digital transformation in an organization where the owners really just don't understand the language of digital transformation, or we're talking about an IT department that has a lot more resources than they need to implement things that really aren't necessary. What I've noticed is that in digital transformation, a good deal of the reasons why our digital transformations are failing really have nothing to do with the technology at all. It's just people. And that's where I have a good deal of experience, right? Not just in the digital transformation space, but in the leadership development and leadership education space. It's about people. It's people themselves that are making these massive mistakes. And so, like I said, I think the ICT industry here in the MENA region is going to grow to about $2 trillion in the next few years. We're probably going to just lose $1.5 trillion of that to waste. And that waste is going to be lost, not because of the technology that we're implementing, but because of the humans that are in charge of implementing it. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to mitigate with you all today in our discussion is, how do we mitigate the loss of efficiency? How do we mitigate against the loss of efficiency and loss of impact in digital transformation when the real issue isn't the technology at all? It's the people that are implementing it and the people that are driving those implementations. So today I'm gonna lead you through a short discussion about that. We're gonna talk about the kinds of disruptors that are coming after us, the kinds of changes that need to be made. I'll talk about a soft skills approach to digital leadership. And I'll talk about digital transformation as an organizational culture change rather than a project or a set of projects. I think for me, one of the most important things we need to recognize, like I said, 84% of all of our digital transformation, this comes from a blend of studies, McKinsey and Booz & Allen and E&Y. Their studies blended together into this statistic. 84% of all of our digital transformation efforts are going to fail, which means we're going to burn about $1.5 trillion in digital transformation spending over the next couple of years, just mostly because of two things. I think there are two primary causes of this. One is legacy technology, and the other one is resistance to change. Those are the two biggest issues. Legacy technology is one. I mean, like, for me, I was a child of the 80s. I was born in the 70s, and I grew up in the 80s, and my dad was one of those guys that spent $3,500 on a Commodore 64 when they were first released, and so I was programming in DOS with two fingers when I was a child, and I was like recording my computer programs on a tape recorder way back when, and so that's the legacy. So I'm a legacy technologist, right? Like I understand and value those old pieces of technology, and a lot of us in large organizations especially, the larger the organization and the older the organization, the more legacy technology we have to deal with, right? Now, we've got all of this stuff that's just a hangover from the 80s and 90s, and it's still our basic operating system in a good deal of organizations that need to digitally transform. But it's those legacy technologies that are holding us back. And not only that, it's the legacy technology itself that's holding us back, but it's also, and secondly, it's the resistance to change, okay? Now it's funny because our competitors, the ones that are coming up in the market, and by our competitors, I mean the ones that haven't even registered for their trade licenses yet, okay? Statistically speaking, the S&P 500, half of those companies will not be in the S&P 500 in 10 years from now. In 2030, the S&P 500 will be made up of 250 companies that haven't even got a trade license now, okay? So just so you're aware, that's the disruption. That's what's going to come. And that's because they are born digital. Those kinds of companies that are only registering now, getting their trade licenses now, they're born digital. They're designing all of their products and services in a fully digital marketplace. They don't have to deal with any legacy structures or any legacy coding at all. It's just like 21-year-olds with billion-dollar code in their parents' basements writing it on an iPad. It's amazing to me because they don't have to deal with all of the stuff that I have to deal with on a boardroom level when I'm doing a digital transformation. They don't have to deal with scoping or discussing or arguing. They don't have to argue with anybody. They just get it done. And they usually get it done in a state of flow, which is 5 times faster than most of us can code. They don't have to deal with any of the bureaucratics or the politics or the posturing that goes on. They don't have to deal with vendor identification or trust building in that vendor or supplier space. They don't have to deal with any of the strategy building. They can just get on with it, right? And that's the kind of organization that we're competing with now, because those are the kinds of people, small teams, 5, 10, agile teams, that are sitting in coffee shops writing code that are going to take all of our business models away. And I'm not kidding. I mean, this is a big concern for a number of my CEO coaching clients. I had one of my CEO executive coaching clients come to me about 18 months ago, and he said, Corrie, I'm going to retire in about 8 years from now. And I said, okay, that's fine. He said, no, there's a problem. The problem is that I don't know if the business model of my organization will last as long as I will. I think it's possible that my entire business model will get pulled out from under me within the next 8 years. And it was a really real fear. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's unbelievable. So I helped them build a future of work strategy and a 4IR strategy for that organization, which really gave them a great pivot into the digital space that they're doing now, they're executing now, which is great. But that very real fear from that very real and very human leader is what sparked that, what brought that on. And I think that's a real fear that's unvoiced by a good deal of our chief executives. In every organization, there's going to be a number of chief executives that are very educated and in tune with the fourth industrial revolution and changes that are coming with all of the new technology that's available to us. And there's also a number of chief executives that are not going to be very in tune, and they know that every minute that goes by that they're not able to catch up, they're losing more ground because the ground that they have to cover is growing exponentially. Okay, Moore's law is applying to the information space and what is being developed every day in terms of MarTech and big data and all of that technology that's available to us. And they know that for every day they spend in the dark, they're going to have to spend 3 more days running to try to catch up. And it's a very scary place for established legacy leaders with legacy technology, and that's where the resistance to change comes from. And it's that resistance to change, I think, more than anything, that really dooms digital transformation efforts. It's not the technology. The technology is great. I know lots of great coders. I've worked with excellent agile teams. I've worked with amazing DT experts and specialists. It's not the tech, okay? The technology is amazing. It's the people. The people they're cynical and they're frustrated and there's a lot of inertia. I think inertia is number 1. I think skepticism is number 2. I think doubt might be number 3, Inertia in the fact that, especially for legacy leaders that have been in their roles or in their organizations or in their careers for a long period of time, they might say, you know what, it's easier for us to not change. Let's just do what we've always done and keep growing the way that we've been growing. The first part you can do, the second part you can't. You can't do what you've always done and expect to keep growing the way that you've been growing. We can't do that. We have, again, those born digital disruptors that are on our heels that are looking to take our business models away. Cynicism is when the DT efforts start to have some complications, and every DT effort has complications, by the way. There is no smooth digital transformation. It doesn't happen. So what needs to be there in the organization is a culture, an agile culture of being able to grab onto those mistakes, grab onto those beta moments, and really make use of them, because the skeptics and the cynics in the organization will definitely grab onto those moments and say, you know what, I knew it. It was never going to happen. It can't happen. We're not going to get what we want out of this digital transformation effort. Let's just scrap the project and move all of those financial resources to my side of the table. Okay, so we've got cynics and skeptics, we've got doubters, and we've got that inertia that's really working against us in the organizations to make sure that digital transformation doesn't happen in the way that it's supposed to happen. And I think those are the 3 biggest things. But again, you guys, those aren't technology pieces. Those are human pieces. Doubt, inertia, and skepticism, those are human. And so for me, or in the last 10 years of DT, in my last 25 years of business strategy and executive performance, I think we have to get used to we have to get good at addressing the soft skills issues when we're talking about digital transformation, so that we know what it is that needs to be done in order to make those efforts much, much more effective. So I want to pause here for a minute. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I have on the chat, and I just want to give you guys a chance to breathe and maybe think about how digital transformation efforts in your organization have gone forward or not gone forward, whether you're on the technology side or on the management side. I want you to think about the actual issues in digital transformation. Is it technology, or is it leadership? Is it management? Is it the human factor that's preventing things from moving forward? Question from Murad. One of the issues we face on our experience is in the shift in mindset toward digital transformation. There is a lot of pre-work that needs to be done before implementing a DT plan with regards to education and awareness. I totally agree with you, Murad. Murad, that is exactly the topic of discussion today, is the human factor. I can't tell you the number of times, actually I can tell you the number of times, because it's every single time. Every single time a DT effort has failed, And every single time a DT effort has been hampered, in my experience over the last 10 years of leading DT, it has been because of this lack of education, a lack of awareness, there's not a good communication plan, and so the humans are getting in the way of this incredible technology. We have amazing tech, but it's the people that are really frustrating the plan. Daniela says, I think we need to add more positions with the different skills than the existing ones to manage the IT and operations. And I totally agree with you, Daniela. That's one of the things that I'm going to advocate a little later on in the session. I'm going to go through a couple of slides. But Daniela, I think one of the things that we really need is very, very strong soft skills in our CDO offices, the Chief Digital Officer. So the Chief Digital Officer and their frontline management, they have to be incredible with soft skills because they have to be able to translate efforts from techie language to Luddite language, basically. And it is really that dramatic. In the organizations that I've been in, that people that don't understand what the digital transformation effort is trying to accomplish, they will get in the way because people get in the way of things that they're afraid of. And we are naturally, as humans, we are afraid of things that we don't understand. So it's only when they start to understand, they get that awareness, they get that education, that a CDO themselves can say, actually, you know what, I need to go back to the communications plan so that I can get everybody that needs to be on board. I need to get all of my stakeholders in line before I can execute this, or I need to get all of my stakeholders at least understanding what it is that we're doing before I know that it's going to go through okay. Otherwise, you get these people like rocks in the middle of your DT strategy trying to hamper the plan. So the 12 big human factors in digital transformation failure, one is a lack of alignment to business outcomes. I've noticed this in a number of organizations that I've worked in, that the efforts of the DT team aren't mapped strategically to the overall vision, mission, values, and goals of the organization. And sometimes that's because the organization themselves don't have a clear and articulated vision, mission, values, or goals. And they're just kind of winging it with these strategic objectives that are made up by VPs and SVPs in their basements, and they just dream them up, bring them to the boardroom table, and hope they're going to be profitable. So there's just a lack of clarity and alignment, I think, in strategy. The second one is a lack of awareness within the organization, and I think it was Murad that picked up on this earlier. That it's really just communication and education and awareness that needs to happen before and during the digital transformation that actually sets the whole thing in motion and makes sure that we're not bumping up against those rocks of inertia and doubt and skepticism. The third one is micromanagement or mismanagement of teams. I'm sure that all of you have seen an example of a great micromanager that you have hated working for. Please be gracious with them. Micromanagers learn to micromanage because they're not taught how to be managers. Okay? Now, I know it's hard to understand, but think about it from the point of a development team. Okay, you have a development team of 8 coders, right? And they're all really, really great. And then one day you decide you need a manager, an agile manager. And so what do? You take your best coder, right? And you make them into a development manager. And that's the worst possible thing you can do. Why? Because you've put somebody ahead of a team of 7 people that aren't as good at them at something that you're not allowing them to do anymore. They're not allowed to do coding. They're supposed to do managing now. Now you're supposed to manage the 7 coders around you. But by definition, you're better than all 7 of them. So he's going to get frustrated with all 7 people on their team, and they're going to micromanage. And that's where micromanagement comes from, is because we elevate people to management without teaching them how to manage. And we pull people away from what they're really, really good at and put them into a discipline that they're not good at, and we don't give them the skills, we don't give them the education or the awareness, and that's where micromanagement comes from, and it just sort of spreads out through the organization because we don't invest in leadership development, we don't invest in management training, okay? The fourth one is distraction by the minutia. So there's a lot, like I said, in micromanagement, there are some leaders, even capital leaders. I've even seen CDOs that are really, really distracted by tiny, tiny little things in a DT effort, and they can spend so much time on those tiny little things and lose track of the overall development of the plan or the execution of the plan. Number 5 is shiny toy syndrome. I gave you an example of this at the very beginning. Sometimes a DT effort will be given a budget, a discretionary budget, and that budget is spent on something shiny that the owners of the project want, and it just doesn't have any business case, so it doesn't provide any net present value to the organization because they haven't done the financial modeling and they don't know how to actually implement what this really cool thing is. It might be, I heard of an example yesterday about blockchain being implemented in a government organization here in the UAE just for the sake of blockchain, okay? There's no business case, there's no MPV. They implemented blockchain just for the sake of implementing blockchain so that they could put it on their website and say, we did blockchain, right? Now, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's shiny toy syndrome. That's throwing money at things that aren't going to have any net present value to the organization, which means everybody in the organization is going to lose as a result because you're going to become less profitable and less competitive in the market. Okay, number 6, the inability to translate into executive language. And I gave you another example of this earlier as well. Just a DT team not being able to dumb down the language of transformation into something that, I don't mean the language of transformation, I mean the tech language, the digital language, not being able to move that language into something that the executives can understand and appreciate. And it's true, like there's a huge vocabulary in artificial intelligence. Like we've got 1,000 different words that don't exist outside of artificial intelligence that we use pretty regularly, and if we don't learn how to translate those terms into something that people are going to understand, then we're going to lose them, and they're going to pretend. This is the worst part, is because they don't want to feel ignorant, and they don't want to feel uneducated, and they don't want to feel like they're out of touch. They're going to pretend to understand, okay? And that's so dangerous. So if we don't have the ability to translate into an executive language that they do actually understand and not just pretend to understand, then we might miss an opportunity to invest in a really great digital strategy that could keep our company much more competitive in the market. The 7th one is the lack of control over external vendors. And that is, I mean, you know, if you don't have the right deliverables in place and milestones in place, and you don't have the right contingencies in place in the contracting, that is a legal issue. And I've seen a lot of IT people, a lot of us in digital transformation get hoodwinked because we didn't do the legal that was necessary, the legal background that was necessary to make sure that our contracting was solid. And if you're not making sure your contracting is solid, then that again is a human factor in digital transformation failure that you can lose out because you've missed on a clause in a discipline, a legal discipline that's totally outside of your area of expertise. So you need to partner with another human who's better than you at legal in order to write those contracts. Number 8 is a lack of adequate training for the users. I've seen this a lot, that there's been digital transformation efforts, and you know what happens is right when you get to the end of the project, the budget's running out, there's not enough budgeting, and where do you cut? Where do you cut expenses from? Training. Oh, just get on with it. Here's the window, here, just open it up, just play with it. Okay, play with it. You'll learn by doing. And it's not true. It's not true. And we lose a lot of efficiencies if we don't actually execute right to the end of the training. And by executing to the end of the training, I don't just mean conducting the training. I mean making sure that people are trained. That is, that they have actually learned, not just that they've been taught. Okay, it's not taught unless it's learned. So lack of adequate training is number 8. Number 9 is a loss of talent to competitors. And I know that a lot of you are bleeding digital talent in your organizations right now because there's a massive demand for people like us who can manage major digital transformations. There's not a lot of us on the planet that are really, really good at this. And so people will go to where they are appreciated. Now, this is a really important thing to know. It's not about the money. It's about appreciation and meaning, even in digital, right? So your most artistic digital coders and developers, they will go to where they find the most amount of connection and meaning in the organization, not to necessarily where they make the most money. In fact, a great study, was it 2017, from the US, they said that people will work for 23% less lifetime earnings as long as they can work in a business or in a job environment that they enjoy. So loss of talent really doesn't come down to the money, it comes down to the competitiveness in meaning, not money. Okay, so that's a really big distinction that you need to know in DT. 10th one is resistance from fear of being replaced. And this is something that I brought up as well before, the robots taking over our jobs. There is that fear, and if that fear is not mitigated or answered, then those people can become enemies within the organization that try to hamper or slow down the digital transformation process. And then number 11 and 12 I've highlighted here because I'm going to give you a quick example of slow decision-making processes and poor prioritization of development. And I do this by illustrating, I'm sorry, I forgot I can't find my clicker, my slide clicker, so I'm actually reaching out and touch. How Luddite is that, right? For a digital transformation talk, that I have to reach out to my laptop and actually push the button to change the slide. It's in my house. I can't find my slide clicker. Anyway, so delay costs is a very simple way for you to illustrate to your executives the cost of bureaucracy and the cost of misprioritization of development. All right, so delay cost is the amount of money that you lose because of a delayed implementation. And I'll give you an example in a minute. This all comes from Maersk Line case study. Okay, so this is what the delay cost would look like if you have a late entry into the market for a product that has a plateau, and you miss the peak of that plateau because of the delay, and you have more competitors, and it's more difficult then to get into the market after that. But if you have that delay, then that's lost earnings. What you see there in the delay cost section, that is lost earnings that are never ever recoverable. Okay, that are unrecoverable earnings. And this is how we calculate it. So this comes from Maersk Line. Maersk Line was looking at implementing an AI-powered invoicing product, and the estimated net present value, or the estimated impact on cash flow, would be about $4 million a year. And that means when we take the development time of this particular product within the organization, and we look at the 34 weeks that it took to develop this, you can see that the feature is identified in week 1. Each of these little triangles is a week. Then there were 14 weeks of approvals and queuing, so prioritization and waiting for bureaucracy. Then there's proof of concept, which really only takes about a week to develop. And then after that, there's another 7 weeks of approvals and prioritization, then 3 weeks of development, because it's not really all that difficult to implement. And then 8 weeks before we actually go live on this particular product. And you'll see that for about 6 weeks of development, there's a 29-week delay cost. And so this particular product, I don't know exactly how much it costs to develop. I'm estimating around $450,000, $500,000 to develop, but the delay cost in this particular project is $2.6 million, which is 5 times more than the price of the product itself. And so it really highlights the value of making sure that we're efficient in terms of our decision-making processes. So you snooze, you lose, right? Which is why I advocate a really very human approach to digital transformation. And so I really want to move toward an enterprise, a leadership, and an employee focus on soft skills. From an enterprise perspective, we need to make sure that our chief digital officers' offices are able to move very quickly to link the executives, managers, trainers, and production experts on the soft side to the security specialists, data engineers, UI designers, and hardware specialists on the technical side. We need to have chief digital officers that aren't just great at tech, but they're also really great at communication. They have to be amazing at communication, and so we want to be able to bridge those gaps in that office. And so that's why we need to take a great leadership focus on soft skills and digital transformation. And for those of us who have been doing digital transformation for a while or are interested in it now, we need to take a much more proactive and intentional approach to leadership and performance in the key roles in these offices, right? We need to take a much more intentional approach to coaching, to storytelling. We have to be able, storytelling is so important in digital transformation. You have to be able to translate what you're doing on a technology side into a meaningful story for the finance team, which is going to be a different meaningful story than the story you tell to the marketing team, okay? Your marketing team wants a totally different story than the story you're telling your finance team, and yet you as a digital transformation officer or a digital transformation specialist have to be able to translate your efforts into a story that's meaningful to either of them, because one of them wants to spend money and the other one wants to save it, okay? So it's going to be 2 different stories. So you have to be an amazing storyteller in order to get that kind of support in the organization. Agile leadership, business analysis, attention mastery, there's so much lack of focus these days. I don't know if you've read the studies, but generally speaking, your focus will be broken every 40 seconds as you work throughout your day. And if you're working in a state of flow, it will take you 23 minutes on average to regain your focus after it's broken. So attention mastery has to be something that we teach to our leaders so that they can get the amount of time in focus and in flow that they need in order to get the job done. reflective listening, just to make sure that we're understanding each other again on a very human level, strategic prioritization, and then Luddite techie translation, which is something that I've already brought up and addressed with you guys. And then on an employee side, what we need in our employees in terms of success for these digital transformations is we need them to embrace the change. And for that, we really got to tell them that they need to seek to understand what they fear or don't understand. Like I said, fear is the natural human reaction to things that we don't understand. And so the more we're able to encourage people to interact with things that they don't understand, the less they're going to fear it, and then the more they're going to participate in making sure the DT efforts succeed rather than fail. And then number 3 is augmenting is not replacing. There's a lot of employees out there without a lot of knowledge about what is being developed in our digital transformation efforts, and so they will get in the way of those efforts only out of a lack of understanding or maybe a fear that they themselves are going to be replaced in the organization, and that's not necessarily true. Yes, it can be that some people are replaced by artificial intelligence engines or code, but there's fear in all kinds of places in the organization where it doesn't belong, by people who are just getting in the way for no particular reason and only out of the fear that they have for things that they don't understand because they think they're going to be replaced. And then the last one is just to recognize that the 4th Industrial Revolution for every employee is the next step in human development. It is inevitable. It is coming. It is like a tsunami of technology that is already here, and it is crashing over us, and it will change the way that we work, and our future of work is going to look very different than our present of work. And so we need to be able to communicate to our employees that the 4th Industrial Revolution is something that is inevitable, and they must embrace it. Otherwise, they will be left behind. And those are my basic messages on soft skills for digital transformation. I think one of the biggest things that we need in our organizations is a better understanding of organizational behavior and leadership excellence and leadership development. And so I've used today digital transformation as a very narrow window into how expensive it can be if you don't have high-performing leaders on your teams and in your organizations. Okay, now I want to step back a little bit from the digital transformation window and look at organizational behavior as a whole. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of presentation because I wanted to stay focused on DT today, but I want to let you know that my next engagement with you, I'm probably going to send you an email tomorrow, or I will call you or something, but my next engagement with you is really going to be on organizational behavior and leadership excellence. And so I've recently published my book. This is where the product placement comes in. Okay, here's my product placement. Basically, this is 10 years of research, you guys, on executive performance, what makes really, really high-performing executives different from really low-performing or mediocre executives. And if you yourself are in a job and want to do your absolute best for your career, I highly recommend this because, again, it's 10 years of research in more than 100 different companies, and there's 30,000 hours of education behind it. So pay attention to that. There are 2 products that I produce in organizations that I think are really important at this time. One of them is performance neuroskills. This is what I'm doing for Microsoft, for Telia Company, for ADNOC, and for others. The performance neuroskills are momentization, mindfulness, and flow, and it's just making sure that as we're implementing the best in our digital technology on the artificial intelligence side, we also have the best in our neuroskills, the neuroskills of our leaders' abilities to think and focus and work quickly and process quickly and be the best they can be in terms of their mental performance. So the performance neuroskills are another product that I have. And then the last one, of course, is based on the book. It is the Spartan CEO 6 Pillars of Executive Performance, which is something that I've been teaching for a number of years, these 6 pillars, but only this year, due to COVID, thanks COVID, I have had the time to actually produce a series of master classes so that you don't have to bring me into your organization and spend a ridiculous amount of money on me in order to learn these 6 pillars. They're now available for individuals, and they're available online at my website at learn.drcorrieblock.com. I'll send you the link in the email tomorrow, or we can talk about it. Now, if you're in an organization and you want me to come in and help to transform the organization, either in terms of digital transformation or more importantly in terms of organizational behavior and executive performance, I want to have a conversation with you, but not on a webinar. I want to have that conversation with you directly on a phone call. So I'm going to pursue all of you tomorrow. In the meantime, if this is something that you want to develop in personally and you want to know the science and behaviors that are behind the most productive and highest performing leaders on the planet, please check in online to my series of masterclasses. It's all self-led. You can register yourself, and you can go in all by yourself and then interact with me there. I'm very happy to help you on your personal journey. And if you would like executive coaching, I'm not sure what your role is exactly, but if you would like executive coaching, I do that as well. Ahmed, you said it's more helpful to think about an organization as a set of social relationships. The way people relate to each other is about more than job titles and official hierarchies. And for digital transformation especially, there may be entrenched, resistant aspects of culture that need to be addressed. Yes, Ahmed. Okay. Ahmed, you have opened up an entirely new chapter of this webinar. With your permission, you guys, I'd like to take you down a little bit of a road. I am an expert in evolutionary psychology and business and the neurochemistry of business performance. And this is something that, Ahmed, you have knocked on a door that has a lot of rooms in it. And when we get into this evolutionary psychology and how we actually are in business and why we're in business together, there are so many more things that are going to make sense to you. Okay, so I'll give you the quick 3-minute version of it. For 300,000 years, humans have been growing and evolving. Okay, we have done that and developed these incredible tools in our minds for survival. All of us that are watching this webinar right now, we have all survived because our parents, their parents, their parents, and their parents have all survived, right? And so the things that we've learned over those 300,000 years have become best practices. One of those best practices is to partner together, to be in relationships. It's fatal to be a strict individualistic human. You can't survive all on your own. You can't hunt and gather enough for yourself. You have to partner with people, right? And in partnering with people, then you can hunt and gather enough to feed everybody, and especially for women who bear children on behalf of our species. It's impossible for a woman all by herself to have a child and hunt and gather all by themselves. Think about it like 1,000 years ago, how impossible that would be. You have to partner in order to survive. And so we partner with each other, and then it's easier for us as families to partner with other families to make sure that all of our families survive together. And so the first few families became tribes. And those tribes meant that we could have some hunters, some gatherers, some protectors, some educators, some weaners, some food preparation people. And so we would have all of these different divisions of labor early on in human development that made it make sense for us. It became very efficient for us to get together in these economic tribes to make sure that everyone gets fed and educated and cared for and protected all at the same time. We used to call them tribes, then they became nations, then empires, and now we call them companies. Okay? The most recent, about 300 years ago, humans started to band together in companies, and companies are becoming much more powerful than countries now. So the countries that we used to be a part of now is starting to dissolve in favor of the organizations that we're a part of, and the companies that we're a part of now are the new human organizations where we all get together around an economic game or an economic project, and we all feed each other's kids, educate each other's kids, take care of each other's parents, provide healthcare and food and transportation and dream building for all of our families all at the same time. That, Ahmed, that is what is behind our organizations, and that is what we need to pay attention to in digital transformation. That all of our efforts and all of the resistance to change that are in opposition to our efforts need to be framed in that very, very human cultural context of we are trying to be competitive so that we can provide for everyone's families all at the same time. We are trying to take care of your kids. We are trying to educate your kids and care for your parents and provide for you in your old age and provide for your parents in their old age. We're trying to take care of everybody's families all at the same time. And our best, fastest, most effective way of doing that is through this particular initiative. If we take that very human approach to digital transformation, I find that in my experience, you get a lot better buy-in when you take that tribal mentality approach to why we're doing this. We're doing this not just because it's fun, and definitely not because it's easy, most certainly not because it's cheap, but because it helps all of our families become and remain more competitive than we would be on our own. So that's a really, really good frame, Ahmed. I appreciate that, and I hope that my little bit of an introduction to the evolutionary psychology of business helps you to get where I'm coming from on the human factors here. Manoj, the title of the book is Spartan CEO. Remember, this book is not about digital transformation, you guys. I've used digital transformation as a very narrow band to get to bring you into the impact of leadership and executive performance on business outcomes and profitability. And so in the book, I go into things like fitness, confidence, discipline, connecting, rest, and competition, and all of those, the really, really good, profitable behaviors from executives that have the most amount of impact in an organization and provide the best amount of performance for those individuals and for the group as a whole. So I take a very blended approach between what's good for the individual is what's good for the organization, and that's a really you can consider it a enlightened self-interest view of organizational performance and organizational behavior. Ahmed, you said, as long as you're trying to open things up, not close them down, everyone involved should be learning too. That's the core meaning of collaboration. Thanks for your valuable input. And thank you, Ahmed. It was an amazing comment, and it kind of took me into a tangent there, but I'm really glad that I'm providing value for you guys. And Daniela, COVID showed already that work can be done differently. However, we hope that we learn from these times and make the changes. And I totally agree with you. I think, Daniela, COVID has been so amazing. Amazing. I was speaking to one of the senior officials of one of the senior officers of Microsoft just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you know what, we did in 3 months of COVID, we implemented 18 months worth of digital transformation within Microsoft. And I totally believe that. And I think a lot of organizations have seen this. Those that approached COVID as an opportunity and without the fear have actually taken on board this opportunity to implement tremendous digital transformation over these last 7 to 8 months. It's been really, really cool. Those organizations that kind of froze up, closed the doors, and they turtled, for lack of a better metaphor. Those organizations that behaved like a turtle in COVID, they're going to suffer because they've lost 8 months of digital transformation opportunity. They've lost 8 months of pivot opportunity, and it's unrecoverable. Those delay costs are unrecoverable. And I agree with you, Daniela, that COVID's been really very, very interesting time. And I know that for myself, I've been able to pivot. I've helped a dozen organizations over this time pivot and find new cash flows and find new opportunities, and more than that, find new meaning, I think, in the work that they're doing and in the communities, the economic communities that they're a part of. And that's what's made me most proud, is that COVID has really helped, in spite of social distancing, to actually bring people's meaning of work closer so that they understand why it is they're participating in this particular economic project at this time and the value that is both to them and to their economic community. Generational factors, yes. Daniela, I do a lot of speaking on millennials and gaps in generational understanding between millennials and myself. I'm 45 years old, and yep, there are some things I don't understand. My son is 19, and he was born with an iPhone in his hand. My daughter is 15. I've got a 6-year-old and 2 3-year-old twins, and I can't even imagine the kind of technology that's going to be available to them when they're my age. And yeah, there's a significant gap in understanding between generations, and that is no more highlighted than in digital transformation efforts. That gap in understanding between one generation and another, that is massively. If you want, Daniela, there's a free resource on my Learning Academy. There's 5 leadership lessons or leadership secrets on my Learning Academy. It's a free course. It's not very long, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. And one of those is just on millennials and leadership and some of the gaps in understanding between us and millennials. And there's another great talk on my YouTube channel. If you check out my YouTube channel, I spoke at the SME World Summit in 2017 on millennials in leadership. And that would be a great resource for you in understanding what the barriers are between one generation and the next generation, and maybe how to make meaningful translations between one generation and the next. All right, I'm going to start signing off, you guys. We've been in this for an hour together. If you have any other questions for me, please connect with me on social media. I am posting every day free free materials for you every single day on leadership and management and organizational behavior, something that you can take away and talk to your team about. You'll find my little like Instagram or LinkedIn posts. They're just little tidbits, things that they're ideas for you to just talk to your teams about what this might mean for us as an organization or as an economic community. Those are free resources for you. There's also free courses on my Leadership Academy, learn.drcorrieblock.com. My book as an ebook is there. Also, the links to find it on Amazon is there. And I'm going to be in contact with each and every one of you over the next couple of days to make sure that we have the opportunity to have a discussion about organizational behavior in your particular organization and how I can add value as you enter into 2021, and hopefully we move past this whole COVID thing and into a much more competitive year for all of our organizations. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. It's really great to be with you. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me on social media. I'm not difficult to find, and I will interact with you. And I'm looking forward to talking to you in the coming days. Thank you for your time.